Hi friends, today's topic is spread spectrum from the subject digital communication. Myself, Professor Samir Bagban. Here in this session, we will understand the following points: basics of spread spectrum, need of spread spectrum, block diagram of spread spectrum, working of spread spectrum, and significance of spread spectrum. Try to understand what is spread spectrum. When we transmit information with limited bandwidth, the band limit has some limitation. The most widely what we use is narrowband. In narrowband, constant frequencies is used. For example, 103 requires more power, easy to intercept, jam and interface easily takes place. In the other word, means spread spectrum requires more bandwidth, it requires less power consumption, and it is more secure as compared to narrowband. These all is specifically used for wireless communication. We'll try to understand with the help of graphical representation by taking narrowband and spread spectrum. Let us say that narrowband has a bandwidth B, and whereas spread spectrum has a bandwidth BSS, which is quite larger than narrowband. Now, let us consider some interference produced in both the narrowband and spread spectrum. Here you can observe that in narrowband, due to interference, maximum of the most of the information is lost, whereas in spread spectrum, some part of the information is lost. Thus, we can say that narrowband is easily intercepted, whereas spread spectrum is more secure. According to the definition given, it is a modulation technique in which transmitted bandwidth is larger the information signal bandwidth. Our next point is need of spread spectrum. As we know that bandwidth utilization is important. We are familiar with the different types of multiplexing and multiple access techniques. For example, we have in multiplexing FDM, TDM, CDM and WDM as we have studied. Whereas in multiple access techniques, we are also familiar with FDMA, TDMA, CDMA and SDMA. Now, to understand the significance of bandwidth, what we prefer is in TDMA and FDMA have limited bandwidth, due to which it produces high spectral efficiency or requires high spectral efficiency. Due to the limited bandwidth, concentrated spectrum is generated. Now, TDMA and FDMA uses narrowband spectrum, whereas the spread spectrum is used in CDMA technique. So, to overcome the disadvantages produced by DMA and FDMA, we move over to CDMA by using spread spectrum. Here we can observe that input data is having an bandwidth B, and which is given as an input for your modulator. It has a second input provided by a frequency synthesizer, and frequency synthesizer is having PN sequence. Now this PN sequence is nothing but pseudo random noise. Now this pseudo random noise is used by frequency synthesizer to generate or for spreading of your signal. Now this demodulator output is your spreaded bandwidth, which we have already seen it. Now this has been transmitted by some mode of channels, mean of channels. Now when the receiver receives this spreaded signal is again given to the demodulator, and which is having an frequency synthesizer as well as PN sequence generator, which is same as your transmitter, so that it will be easy for your demodulator to generate the input data. See the significance of spread spectrum. Immunity to jamming. Immunity to the jamming is nothing but narrowband and spread spectrum. Now in narrowband we see that it has less bandwidth, whereas in spread spectrum it has a wider bandwidth, due to which we can say that it is having a wide range. If the interference is produced in both the parameters, narrowband will get affected, whereas spread spectrum will not get affected. So it is less interference, it has less interference. Hence, due to the less interference, it has a high processing gain. We are also saying that it is easy to encryption because the transmitter and the receiver are having the same PN sequence, due to which the receiver can easily decrypt the spreaded signal at the receiver. It produces greater security, and access system we use CDMA in wide range. Hope so you have understood spread spectrum.